everybody. I'm Ketan Gangatirkar. I'm your moderator for this session. I'm currently Vice President of Engineering and Product at Coder, where we're building the future of software engineering workspaces. I'm delighted to introduce you to our next speaker, Bhawna Singh. Bhawna and I know each other from when she was at Glassdoor and when I was at Indeed. Now she is SVP of Engineering at Auth0 and is going to speak to you about scaling teams and technologies in a high-growth and high-stakes environment. Bhawna, please take it away.
Thank you, Ketan, and thank you for that introduction. It's been a pleasure working with you in past and great to connect with you again through the Plato platform. Hello, everybody. I am, as Ketan said, I head Auth0's engineering, which just got acquired by Okta, a worldwide leader in customer identity, authentication, and authorization space. And I head Auth0's 300 plus globally located engineering team. And I also help drive the technology strategy and delivery across 200 plus private and public cloud environments. I'm responsible for our high resiliency posture, and frequently I connect with global customer base that we have to build deep trust through the technology roadmap of building highly scalable and stable Auth0 products. I'm also responsible for Auth0's data, as well as making sure the scanning the threat landscape for Auth0 and keeping the product secure. So it is my absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. I've attended a few Plato events now, and I'm amazed to see every Elevate event becoming bigger and inviting larger attendees, a strong testament to the Plato mission, I would say, and its impact. So in today's conversation, I'm going to share from my experience about what goes into bringing teams and technology along in a high growth and high stakes environment. We all have heard of move fast, break things approach, and for hyper growth, it works for many stages of a company. Also, when you're innovating, we need to create room for failure and learn and iterate from there. But when your growth is in a high stakes environment where failing is not an option, where 4 nines is table stakes and 5-9 is the expectation from your customer, how do you still move fast? How do you still create an environment of innovation where failure is supported? And how you, as a leader, scale? At Auth0, we are in high growth stage, and the product we offer sits at the top of our customer application or service, authenticating and authorizing access for their users. So building a secure and highly available product is table stakes. But before I get into the topic of our high growth and high stakes environment, let's also acknowledge the challenges all of us leaders face today, regardless of the environment of our business. Because these industry challenges are also in the mix when we are trying to bring everyone along in high growth and high stakes environment. All of us are touched by the very dynamic talent market right now. With COVID and more companies becoming remote friendly, we are now going to the talent and hiring them in their location instead of talent coming to tech or opportunity hub locations. And this is changing the compensation layout, not just in US, but globally. And the market is still not settled. And many companies are still figuring out what their new normal should look like. Net, acquiring talent is getting challenging, and companies are getting creative. Another big shift you see is a very ripe investment market. With the string of companies going IPO, surge in startups, throughout the pandemic, stock market has been on a rise. So you can tell that the investment market has funds to pour in, and new investment opportunities are growing. And with new investments comes the need for talent, adding further to the strained talent market. And then there's global pandemic and the lay of the land. Pandemic is still very much here and playing a role in our organizational decisions. With more and more remote teams, building team morale is a key responsibility of leaders. I saw many questions in the last few talks that was all around, how do you build team morale? How do you bring your teams together to build that connection with every country in a different stage of recovering from pandemic? There are countries experiencing high inflation. As their leader, how do you ensure fair pay to your people? While many companies have expanded globally with remote adoption, how do you stay on top of employment laws of every country? So, as we talk about high growth and high stakes environment, these industry challenges are very much in the mix. And as a leader, you have top of your mind as well. So, if there is a challenge that you are facing that did not like I did not touch on here, please go ahead and drop it in the chat, and we can talk about it if we have time in the end. But I'm going to get into the core of the topic today, which is how do we bring our teams and technology along in high growth and high stakes environment. And in the time I have, I'm going to touch on two topics for bringing teams and two topics for bringing technologies along, and then we can open up for Q&A and go deeper in any other area that's of the interest of the audience. So let's start the conversation with teams and how to bring teams along in such an environment. When your business, and hence your teams, are growing fast, to build alignment, cross-team collaboration, and keep fueling the team motivation further, it all starts with a healthy communication channel. Communication flowing both ways. Equally important is that we have open and transparent communication so everyone understands the decision we are making and why we are making them. When everyone gets the direction, understands the direction, every small and big decision can be made at various levels, and we would still be moving towards the same goal. And it's empowering to the team. I'll share a couple of examples from Auth0. Since Auth0 hired remote workforce since its founding, the culture of blogging internally and sharing the information is ingrained in the teams. We have regular and frequent all hands at different levels for more live conversation, and a lot gets shared with everyone through blogs or newsletters. Our CEO writes a weekly blog to share company level updates to bring everyone along on where we are and where the company is heading, as one example of communication. I do monthly, looking backward a month on what we achieved and looking forward a month on where we are headed. The other communication aspect that we have intentionally built in all of our channels is a feedback, or you can say learning loop, so that most of our process we can shift, evolve, or reprioritize based on the feedback we are receiving on what we are uncovering. Another example to share here would be, given our global workforce, because there were some questions around remote teams and how do you make sure everybody's informed. To do that and to ensure relevant information is reaching everyone, asynchronous open communication channels are more common, such as conference or public Slack channels, instead of directed emails or Google Docs where you need to give access to everyone. So those are the few things we have put in place. But again, emphasizing on communication and watching what works for your team and your company is absolutely critical. But bi-directional communication channels and a healthy channel is key and step one for bringing teams along. And also for you to scale. The second big area I would highlight is investing in teams and talent. Hiring and retention has to be on every leader's top of mind, no matter the company state or stage. But it becomes even more critical when we are growing our teams to support the growing business need. We need to train our leaders to grow to scale, as well as hiring leaders for scale of tomorrow. Training at every level is important for retention, and equally important is to define a career path for everyone so they know how they will grow with the company. And along with retaining talent, hiring new talent to help with growth demand needs a good onboarding process. Pandemic has forced all of us to operate in the remote world. And I'm sure all of us had to bring our onboarding process along. But a constant effort needs to be in place to continuously improve the hiring and onboarding process. It's not a one and done thing. And in addition to the hiring and retention, it is also important to look at alternate hiring paths, which usually gets overlooked or stays untapped. It's absolutely a capability or a potential that you have to explore for your team and your company and for hiring needs. In a high growth environment, along with all the market dynamics that we just discussed or touched today briefly, thinking through alternate hiring paths in addition to your company recruiting team is important. Is there an opportunity to add consultants? Is there an opportunity to add agency for hiring to unlock your recruiting potential? Or is it time to think about adding another location to the teams you're building? Having a hiring strategy aligned with your future growth in place is something I would call to attention if you're growing fast. And the most underinvested area, especially in COVID world, is cross-team and cross-organization fun engagements. Many of us are in very serious business, but having fun is important to keep energizing the team. Hackathons, celebrating small wins, cross-team get to know each other events, fun events are a must-have for healthy teams and organizations and to fuel innovation. The more they get to know each other, the more they understand what problem each and every other team is solving, they will engage organically, and creativity will come through that engagement. So I'm going to move now to bringing technology along in high growth and high stakes environment, given the time. But we talked about team alignment, and equally important is technology alignment across engineering. And one thing I would call out, and I've seen enough number of times that many places we don't have it in place, is engineering principles and technology guidance document. To continue to support growing teams and systems to scale while ensuring our technology and best practices are up to date, by documenting our engineering principles and technology guidelines, we can reduce decision-making complexity and make cross-team technology collaboration easy. And I'll give you an example, maybe a couple of examples here. If you use Kafka and Kinesis, and I'm just picking an example, it could be different for you. If you use Kafka and Kinesis as messaging technologies, and a new tech lead you hired is more comfortable with RabbitMQ because he or she used it in their past company, is it okay for them to add another messaging technology in your tech stack? And what overhead will it create on your teams to support it in your CI/CD pipeline and your security team to review any version vulnerabilities? Let me give you another example. When should you upgrade? A very common situation between engineering and product. Should the team work on version upgrade or roll out another feature? We all know where that conversation ends. And using a software or service after its end of life is the biggest and most common security threat. I can't emphasize this enough. But if you add the guideline to ensure that we are never two major versions behind, it will ensure that if ever an exception to that guideline is made, you're involved. Your security teams are involved. And there are enough eyes on it for you to handle it correctly. And at all other times, it's business as usual. So you can focus on other priorities. The principles and guidelines can become the North Star for your team for day-to-day project decision-making with the goal to make decisions simpler, avoid analysis paralysis while making trade-offs, and ensure your vulnerabilities are in check, or at least known. Equally important is to revise this document at a cadence so you are not missing out on adopting a new technology. We have a cadence to review it every quarter. You can pick a cadence that works for you. And then the second key area of investment is your release pipelines, robust release process and pipelines. I'm sure we all can agree here that to ensure our teams can innovate, test, and release while we are growing teams and adding new engineers to the team, investment in building robust release process and pipeline is a must-have. The release process has multiple steps with guardrails, robust checkpoints, and a checklist to verify all standards are met for security, privacy, and compliance. A CI/CD pipeline with a full suite of testing, including load and performance testing, security checks, and the ability to reject a release candidate if the checks are not met. These are all important aspects of your pipeline. Use of feature flags or quick rollback procedure are in place and with every release. Also that your pipeline is adaptable. If a security patch needs to go out, there's a fast path for it. If you need to slow down your release or even shut down, you can do that quickly too. So investment in your release process as well as your pipeline is absolutely a must-have. I would go as far as saying a healthy deployment process is foundational to the team happiness. I know someone asked, how do you keep your team happy? Now, there is so much more we can talk about on this topic, but I have to wrap it up by saying that embracing change is the key in high growth environment, while building operational excellence to make sure the changes are not a distraction is how you survive high stakes. And as a leader, we have to bring our teams and tech stack along, aligned with the growing business needs. But if you have other thoughts on handling change and have examples on what worked for you or didn't work, please take a moment to drop it in the chat. And I'll invite Ketan back and see if there are questions that I should be answering. Ketan?
Thank you, Bhavna. That was very informative, and I hope the audience can apply the valuable lessons you shared. From the audience, we have a question from Giselle, who asks, how does working remotely affect fostering a high-stakes environment?
Well, the one thing, and I would say the common outcome when many companies moved remote is the lack of collaboration, lack of engagement, and lack of, I would say, creative conversation, right? So when you are in high stakes environment, not knowing what this other team is doing or what's going out that can impact your work can certainly have an impact on your high stakes environment, because it can have security implication or other vulnerabilities because something breaks down in the production. So two things, I think the 2 points that I added absolutely are a must-have to keep your environment secure. But in addition to that, cross-team collaboration, connection, openly sharing of what each teams are doing, roadmaps and everything. So it should be publicly available so that everybody has access to it. Is absolutely a key aspect of high-stakes environment to make sure that the environment is secure. Now there are implications of being remote, but there's also something that we can do, which is, infuse, I would say, engagement opportunities, infuse opportunities to learn what other teams are doing, infuse opportunities to celebrate wins and what went out, so that you're bringing the understanding of everyone together. And as leaders, I would say even summarize what happened. So because too much information can be overwhelming for everybody. So summarize and give your team, I would say bi-weekly, weekly, monthly, whatever works for us. Like I said, I'm a bit procrastinator, so I go monthly updates and summarize it to bring everybody along. But that's the key. How do you bring everybody along, no matter the remote or not remote, every time? That's the key to winning here.
Thank you. As a follow-up, I'm going to combine two questions from Jug. First, he asks, how does Auth0 make this information, make the documentation more accessible to all the team members asynchronously? And relatedly, he also asks, how is this documentation kept up to date? And I can certainly relate. I'm pretty good at writing something the first time, going back on a regular basis to update it. That can be a little bit harder.
Yeah, no, that's true. So let me answer first question, which is, how do we do it? We leverage Confluence extensively, and all of our design docs are in Confluence, openly accessible, as well as the decision-making record is also in Confluence, and comments of everything, as well as there are some Confluence, I would say, spaces which have capability to update Slack channels to say something new came up, so that people can engage with that document is also key. And then, of course, as leaders and managers, we also play a role to make sure that something that is of key of a certain or will be important for a few other teams, we also say, hey, by the way, did we read that document? So that it's a collective effort, but publicly available Confluence document is our way of I would say documenting and sharing. How do you keep it up to date? Absolutely. And that requires, again, cadence. I'm not going to claim that we are perfect here. There's some work that we, even at Auth0, we need to keep doing. But building a cadence of cleanup, building a cadence of just going into Confluence that if you're reading or anybody is reading and telling, even an onboarding stage, that we say, if you are reading a document that you feel is outdated, just tag it with deprecated. And then we will build a cadence to clean them up. So it takes effort. And as leaders, we have to make sure that we have a cadence built around to make sure it's up to date. But step one is publicly sharing, and step two is making sure that we're building a cadence. There's no perfection here. And, we all depend on each other and our teams to make sure that we can stay up to date and current.
Yes, and well taken that there's no perfection. In my 20-odd years in the industry, I have never worked at a single company where people said, the documentation is complete, it's up to date, it's clear, and it's easy to find. We don't need to do anything. Unfortunately, that's never happened.
Absolutely. +1 to that, Ketan.
We have a question from Rashad, who's curious about examples of having fun remotely, how you foster that team spirit through those events.
Quite a few ways. And there's some fun games that you can play on your on Zoom. One fun game that we played was turning everybody's video off, and one person randomly goes and says, "This is some fact about me. Maybe I'm the eldest sibling or something like that." And then everybody else turns on their video and says, "Oh, I can relate to that." So you kind of get to know in a very fun way as to who are other people who have similar, I would say, characteristics as you. But that's just one example. We have hackathons that we certainly host. We have cross-team and cross-organization knowledge sharing events, and it's kind of like a whole 2 to 3 days that we dedicate towards learning. We call it U++. And lots of, sometimes a drink making opportunity as happy hour and other things. But it's all I would say just bringing teams together for conversation. A happy hour session also goes a long way. Everything doesn't have to be a fun and a planned event, but also take the opportunity to bring in someone who can facilitate and help learn a certain skill set. It could be a soft skill, it could be a hard skill, but learn something together. One of my team planned to learn a new technology on using the online course, but they decided to do it together on a few Fridays. And that just brought the team camaraderie together. So it really depends on team and what matters to them and what they define as fun. But I would absolutely encourage. This is very key and very underinvested area, but goes a long way in retaining your team and building that healthy organization. Thank you for the question.
There's a related question from Pauline who asks, how do you measure team sentiment and morale? Of course, because you can make efforts to create a fun, healthy environment, but how do you know if you've done it in this remote setting? And do you have any unique platforms that you've used that you are able to share?
We have used a couple of platforms. I think Glint is a more known platform to understand your team sentiments and what's going on. We have at Auth0, we have a few teams who take anonymous feedback as well through surveys that we leverage to understand where the teams or what the team is feeling and where they are at in I would say the plan and where we want to be. So there are multiple ways. If you want to start simple, just go through a survey platform that you can leverage. SurveyMonkey comes to mind to get the polls done. If you want to go full blown, then there are platforms such as Glint and a few other polls check platform that you can leverage to get more accurate and also start building trends around your team's health and sentiment.
Related to health and sentiment, Himanshu asks, since Auth0 was acquired by Okta, how do you address post-acquisition concerns, which folks on the team may have had? Was it a life-changing event? Did people feel left out? Can you describe that situation and how you handled it?
Yeah. So look, I will say I've been part of enough acquisitions now and have participated in M&A myself. I'll tell you, acquisitions are very, very complex. I would even say that's the biggest, when we talk about embracing change, that's a big change. And a lot goes into, again, communication. These 4 points that I made, they anchor a lot of aspects. Communication, telling everybody what we are doing, what we do not know yet, and what we still have to work on. And a constant communication goes a long way with building the trust with the team. So that's the number one thing. And that's why when I say our CEO, as well as Okta CEO, together, setting the tone of what this acquisition means, and then holding weekly all hands as well as newsletters to say what we are thinking about, what we are talking about, what we have not talked about, but is an open question, really helped ground everybody. Now, there is an aspect of it, I won't say it was perfect, and there were not emotions that were not, I would say, checked. We had to take the feedback, and that is where taking feedback and doing polls came in handy, which is we asked them questions. Okay, so did it land well? What else should we be doing? How else should we measure this? And we got feedback from our team, which we then reactively, I would say, addressed after getting that feedback. So communication, going to the team, asking for through polls as to what's working and what's not working played a role. But across the board, this telling the story of what this acquisition means, it's a huge acquisition. A lot of money was spent. So telling the story of what this acquisition means and the outcome of it was the grounding thing. Because when everybody understands the vision of acquisition, where we are going, and what it means, the grandness of the capability that we're going to unlock now as a huge company, or the leader in the company of customer identity access management, that what truly the opportunity truly opened the minds for everybody to solve for the change that everybody was dealing. Now, how did someone left out? I'm sure someone left out. It's a very complex change to deal with. But at the same time, I'll tell you, the intentions were right all the time, and there was a constant effort. And even now, we do that to ensure that we are bringing everybody along. It's not a one and done. It needs constant reminder, constant vision call out, constant why we are here definition that goes into it to bring everybody along. Is it time?
We've got a little bit of time left.
Okay.
Fun fact on acquisitions, Bhawna, while she was at Glassdoor, was acquired by the same company that acquired Indeed while I was at Indeed.
That is true. That's how we were able to work together, Ketan.
Yeah. And that went reasonably well, I think. A very popular question from Brock. What is your favorite book on the shelf behind you?
Well, I'll say that the newest book that I have right now is Indra Nooyi's Life in Full, which I'm not done reading. I'm just halfway. There are some other most of these are favorite books. I have Good to Great here. I certainly have The Enemy of Engagement, and my really emotionally connected book that I have here is The Hard Things About Hard Things. Which certainly goes and resonates strongly when you are at the top and trying to lead through a lot of changes as to what it entails. So some of my favorite books are here. I can keep going on the list, but just wanted to call out a few. Thank you for asking that, by the way, Brock.
That last one by Ben Horowitz of A16Z fame. I've read that. I found it very valuable as well.
That's true.
Now, since I'm moderator, I get to abuse my power a little bit. So for our last question, that's from me. One skill that I've had to develop over the years is onboarding new employees. With complex software products, such as the ones you work on and the ones I work on, that often takes months with all the different technologies, languages, etc. Now, in a high-growth company, the roadmaps, the teams, the responsibilities are constantly changing. So how do you set up an effective onboarding plan that lasts enough of the time that an new employee needs to onboard, but it remains stable and predictable in that kind of dynamic situation?
Yeah. So, and that's a great question. And Ketan, as you mentioned, I would invite you to bring some of those points as well. But I'll make a couple, which is on the onboarding side, putting a checklist is a step one on onboarding. What are the important things that you need in place? What are the channels? Like I said, when information is flowing more publicly, you need to anchor your new hires to where should I start, right? So onboarding is to be done with the focus of what should be the grounding or the starting position for this new hire. In my point of view, it's not like, let me take care of you for the full year. It's let me give you a start, let me boost you, let me help you and support you during early time while you learn and kind of build your own connection. A onboarding buddy is key because not everything can be part of the written document, right? So that's absolutely a key. And then the third aspect I would call out about onboarding, like you said, how does it stay there forever? I'm not sure if such a thing exists. Onboarding needs a constant work and updates to it. A couple of things I would say is, video channels of learning, because there's a lot of opportunities of knowledge sharing. So there will be a lot of videos that would be created regardless organically, bringing that, structuring it so that people can learn what are the different platforms, features, services, products in the company, and creating, I would say you can use Lessonly and there are other video platforms. That helps a lot. So going through checklist, a buddy, your videos to talk about, or introduce your technology and tech stack. And then the last one, I just want to call out engineering principles and guidelines to truly align you right away with what matters, what technology stack you have, where you have, and all of that. That's the state of starting. Ketan, feel free to add. What did I miss?
Well, I think we're out of time. I'll tag on just a quick comment. One of the things that we talk about as we're developing the Coder product, a tagline we've come up with is onboarding never stops.
Yeah.
And that relates to some of the continuing ongoing learning and tracking that you've described. But we're out of time here on the main stage. Thank you very much, Bhawna. If you have further questions, I know I didn't get to all the questions in the Q&A, Bhawna and I will be in the post-session lounge for about 10 to 15 minutes, but we need to vacate this main stage for the next keynote.
Yes,
so thank you very much.
Thank you, Ketan, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for engaging with me on the keynote topic, and I'll be in the lounge, as Ketan said.